welcome to the first episode of our Yangon podcast. So, last night, me and William went to see the WLC. Oh yeah, so we probably should introduce ourselves first, right? New to this. So, my name's Sean.
I'm Will.
Yeah, and last night we went to the WLC, which is the premier organisation for Lethwei, a combat sport that we'll be focusing on a lot, seeing as we're in the homeland of it. And the WLC is the biggest organisation in Lethwei. Me and William have been following Lethwei for a while from afar, and it was quite exciting to finally get to see our first event.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I'm a relatively newcomer to fighting in general. You've been into it for a while, like UFC, MMA, all that kind of stuff. And I started getting into it a little secondhand. I just went to one event in Vietnam, which is pretty underwhelming. It's a bunch of boxers trying to act like they knew how to do Muay Thai. Not any knockouts or anything. So for a casual like me, it's pretty underwhelming. So it was a nice surprise to get some real action last night. Yeah.
And yeah, for me, I've only seen one event live as well, which was a One Championship kickboxing event, and it was pretty good. You know, it was good, but last night was a bit different. You know, like the Lethwei it's a more brutal and primal sport, really. You know,
So what's the quick rundown of the differences between Lethwei and normal kickboxing?
Okay, so in normal kickboxing, obviously it's gloves, it's no headbutts. In Muay Thai, you're allowed to use the elbows and knees, but in normal kickboxing, you can't do that. And in Lethwei, everything's on the table. You can do headbutts, you can do elbows, you can do knees. They only wrap their hands. There's no gloves. In normal Lethwei as well,
there's some differences between traditional Lethwei rules and WLC rules, which maybe we'll get into that slightly later.
Exactly, yeah. So we'll come back around to that. But yeah, I mean, we've been working on a documentary for about Lethwei now, so just being able to see it, like I said, in person was like in the heartland, the homeland of the sport was really something special, you know. It was cool.
Yeah,
it was a spectacle.
It was cool. I mean, the place where they were holding it, Tame Pew Stadium, if I'm saying that right, which I'm probably not. But it doesn't look like a whole lot from the outside. It looks kind of like old and run down, but then you go inside and it was nice. I mean, it was like a medium-sized arena, I would say. Like not huge.
On the small end.
On the smaller side, which was nice because we were in like the lesser tier of seats, but we still had a really solid view. You know.
And one thing that was good for our first event was that we got to see one of the poster boys of the sport, which is a guy called Tutu.
Tutu.
Who is a Burmese guy from Yangon, and he was an undefeated Lethwei fighter.
Middleweight.
Middleweight,
right? Yeah.
The reigning champion. And so we were hoping to come and get a bit of a carnival atmosphere as the hometown boy. You know, brings it home, defends his belt against the Uzbeki named John Tuktaboyev.
Tuktaboyev, yeah. But he didn't defend it, did he?
He did not. It was it was slightly anticlimactic at the end. You know, we went down to a decision, which
split decision,
yeah, and it went against them. You know, we have a new champion in the WLC middleweight belt.
What did you think of the fight? Like the main event, like what was your impressions of the kind of the skill of those fighters, like the dynamic between them?
As we were saying when we were watching it, like it felt like a main event. You know, like the Burmese crowd don't tend to be too raucous with their cheering and like
no alcohol served at the event might have had something to do with that.
No alcohol served at the event, yeah. But for their boy Tutu, they were really giving it some noise and.
Two.
It was like with Lethwei, it seems to be there's more headhunting, right? Even though with the WLC they have decisions at the end of the fight. Like the name of the game with Lethwei seems to be like knock the other motherfucker out, you know. And you could see that like both of them were going for it, even though they didn't get it. there was a significant level up in skill from the fights that preceded it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, just the movement was so much faster. Like, we're taking some snapshots and a bit of video, and like the earlier fights, they were kind of, the movement wasn't that fast. They were just kind of slowly moving back and forth, easy to follow with the camera. But then when Tutu and Tuktabayev were fighting each other, like they would just fly across the ring, so fast.
It was, and just like it was two dancers, like you see in another org where, like one of the big orgs where, they were moving really fast, but the distance was being maintained at all times. So they were never like that they were never too far away from each other, just anticipating each other's movement. I felt that it was a very close fight.
You can't argue with that.
Yeah.
I mean,
it was close. I feel that the Uzbeki had better hands. He seemed more physically strong than Tutu as well. Tutu was working the low kicks.
He picked up Tutu and threw him, just straight up picked him up and threw him down a couple of times. Like,
it was like a suplex almost, like backwards over. It was a really impressive slam. But Tutu was working the low kicks a lot better than we'd seen in some of the preceding fights.
Yeah, there hadn't been too many low leg kicks in the fights before that, which I mean, I understand that's something you see quite commonly in Muay Thai.
Yeah.
Fighters with that kind of background.
Yeah.
So that was a little surprising.
It was surprising because it can be such an effective attack in taking away the strength of the other person's forward momentum.
And it's low risk a bit, isn't it, as well?
Sure, unless you're just spamming them and they get checked.
Yeah. Sure.
But yeah, I mean, Tutu was using the leg kicks much better than I'd seen in the previous fights, like we said. But evidently the judges didn't think it was enough. I feel that the rounds that the Uzbeki won, he won much more convincingly with like.
Sure, I mean, I remember especially the first round. Like, Tutu had nothing.
Right.
Like,
his attack seemed heavier, more damaging. Like Tutu he never got knocked down, but he got wobbled a few times where you could see he was clearly stunned. What impressed me about the Burmese crowd was the lack of anger towards the decision. Like, I feel that, like, if that had happened in Ireland, in a Conor McGregor fight or something, there might have been a few boozed up people in the audience.
Full scale riot, I'm thinking.
Yeah, that they wouldn't have taken too kindly to a tight decision going against their boy. And the Burmese fans, they were very like, a few of them were shaking their heads, but like they seemed to be kind of have a smile on their face, quite philosophical about the whole situation.
And just kind of probably just glad to enjoy a night of good Lethwei like we were.
Yeah, I mean, it was our first ever Lethwei card. It was Tutu's first ever defeat, so I can't help but feel somewhat responsible for that.
Yeah. What did you think of the earlier fights? Any that stood out to you?
Well, the one that we both had our eye on was the Tranti Lua versus Suri Manfredi, the French woman, and we were obviously cheering for the Vietnamese girl.
Yeah, I mean, we had a special interest because we're both coming from 5 years spent in Vietnam. We have a lot of love for that country and its people, but it seemed like a little bit of a mismatch from the start, didn't it?
Yeah, when you saw them both come out, the French woman was, very oversized compared to the Vietnamese.
Yeah, she was bigger. I mean, the French Manfredi was, 31 years old against a 19-year-old Vietnamese who are not renowned for their stature.
No, right. And you could see it wasn't even that, like, the Vietnamese girl, she didn't have much muscle on her either. She just looked like a normal Vietnamese girl.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure she's in good shape, but, even if their physical attributes were similar, like, 12 years of fighting experience. I mean, maybe she hasn't been fighting that whole time, sure, but however many years of extra fighting experience, the amount of seasoning that will give you as a veteran, like, pwah.
I mean, what did Manfredi have? She had like 60, 70 fights.
Yeah, they were saying 17 knockouts or something like that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And 60 or 70 fights overall.
Yeah, she just ended up getting slammed. Chung Tilo just ended up getting slammed to the ground a few times, broke her spirits a little bit, and finished her with a right.
you saw Manfredi. She was really using her strength advantage quite well in that fight.
Yeah, she didn't muck about. Like,
tossing her around down to the ground. She, like you said, hit her with some really nice slams that kind of took the wind out of her sails a little bit, and then finished her with punches. Couldn't argue with that result.
No,
really.
I mean, I would have questions for the Vietnamese lady's agent or her booking manager. Like, I mean, hopefully she got a decent payout, but definitely seems sadly a little out of her league there.
At this point in her career, you know, she's a very young girl. Like, it doesn't seem that there are weight classes in the women's division either, because I don't think there's even a women's champion yet. I think they're doing. They're just.
Well, in general, the WLC is just they seems like fairly recently they started doing weight classes because it was like open weight before.
Yeah, that's right.
And now they're just starting to fill out the championships for each weight class, aren't they?
And for the women's one, there is no champion yet. Like, I read an article a few days ago about Manfredi, who she's saying she's aiming to become the first ever women's Lethwei champion, because there's none. So I figure that it's like an open weight sort of thing. So you will see these mismatches at the early stage of.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I do think as well. Like, I haven't seen many women's Lethwei fights, and I think traditionally it's definitely a man's field.
Yes.
In this country, but you know.
Yeah, I read some.
Bring it on.
I read some articles about that, about women's Lethwei fighters, and they were saying, like, they're heavily discouraged from doing it. They're sort of like, they're kind of laughed at. They're just discouraged that it's not a sport for women.
Actually, I saw a little documentary about that. I'll link it. But yeah.
Yeah. I think that's probably what I'm getting it from. Actually. So what else we got here? We got that one. We have the.
Muay.
Yeah. Yes. This is
Muay against Tar Win Tun.
And I think that we both agree that was the KO of the night.
Yeah. A knee to the face.
Right, and the other guy was dropping into it, smacking knee to the jaw. Collapsed.
Out cold, man. I was worried. Like, I think I could actually see his soul escaping his body as he went down.
That was a proper into the shadow realm fucking knockout, man.
Tell you what, I could happily go my entire life without ever experiencing a knee to the face. Like.
Yeah.
I like to think I'm not the softest guy around, but that one, I can skip it.
It did seem like he was coming to a bit, but only when he was on the stretcher, already removed from the ring. I mean, he was flat out.
He was face down. They flipped him over. It was a proper flip over. No life in those limbs.
Very impressive, and well done to Mway. I think he's only 18 years old, if I remember correctly.
I'm not sure.
No, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, he was leaving himself open quite a bit. I noticed in some of the earlier rounds, like some of the less experienced fighters, they were just going for big swings, and like he had some very ambitious headbutts, if I recall, where he was just kind of flying in with the head, and
from about 3 or 4 foot back.
Oh, you got to be careful with that one, I think.
Yeah, I mean,
got away with it though.
I don't want to correct the form of someone like Mway, because like he clearly knows what he's doing, but it seems like you need to set up those headbutts a little bit better. He was just kind of running forward.
A better opponent would punish him heavily for that.
Chin out, head out. So that was very shocking.
Yeah, we had a buddy with us as well who was not at all into fighting, and he was pretty impressed by that, I think.
Yeah,
he made a mark on it.
A French fellow filmmaker, and you knew he was impressed because he lapsed into to French when he was talking about it. Again, he was giving it like "le sacre bleu." But so let's talk about Lethwei versus other combat sports that we're a little bit more familiar with. Do you think that it appeared to be more skilled or like more nuanced, or what do you think?
It's a little tough to say, because I do think the fact that we alluded to earlier that the WLC does have decisions it must affect a fighter's approach to a fight as opposed to their only route to victory being a knockout. What do you think about that?
Yes, I'd have to agree with you there. I think like with classic traditional Lethwei, you know, if no one knocks the other one out, it goes to a draw. So there's a lot more emphasis on headhunting and trying to put the other person down and keep them down. And I guess like with the practitioners that grew up fighting Lethwei with its more traditional rules, like not the WLC rule set, that would really impact the way that you approach your whole style.
Yeah.
So I guess you do see like less of the kind of point fighting, even though.
Oh, I've seen people. Some people were commenting about some Burmese fans were commenting about the 2-2 result, and they were kind of saying they did think that 2-2 wasn't so used to fighting for points. I don't know how true that is based on the fight, but it's a factor. It's a factor, no doubt. And I don't know. Yeah, I've kind of mixed feelings about that. Like, I think the WLC is doing great. It seems like they're doing great things for promoting the sport, and like, the sport is really growing so much, but they're making certain changes to it, which must be controversial in order to bring in that kind of mainstream appeal.
I completely agree. I think like the question is like, it was definitely an entertaining spectacle, no doubt, but was it different enough from Muay Thai or kickboxing at this point? Once you take away that's the stuff that
because it's not just about like the moves that are allowed, right? Because there's the headbutts, which is a big that's a big point in Lethwei. Right. But you didn't see that many headbutts, and frankly, they're a pretty risky maneuver, right? Mm-hmm. Like you want to be careful with those. You're not going to be throwing them left and right unless you're So Lin U or something like that.
Sure. I feel one of the main marketing points for Lethwei is that it's this untainted martial art that spans back 1,000 years that has had barely any changes, and like a big part of that was the KOs. I mean, things end in a draw. I mean, so be it. You can say that like you can treat a draw like a win on paper if someone dominates the other opponent. Like,
sure.
And you can say that okay, this person deserves a step up after this fight, just because the win is not on their record. I don't think you have to tamper with what made the sport special.
Yeah, well, they could even, I mean, this is just complete nonsense brainstorming, but you could even have like a draw and a decision kind of at the same time, where it's like, it's not a win, it's a draw by Lethwei rules, but then you have, the judges score someone as the winner, so it's like a quasi-win. That might just make it too messy. But.
Yeah, I do see what you're saying, but I feel that like they almost did that already before when, like for example, when Tutu and Dave Leduc fought. Dave Leduc beat the shit out of Tutu, but he didn't finish him, so it was a draw. But everybody acknowledged that Leduc won that fight. He dominated that fight, and then he went on to get the Tun Tun Min fight on the back of that.
Sure.
Because it was acknowledged that he deserved that step up to fight like the king of Lethwei.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is a really important question we were discussing, where it's like, if you remove that, because it's not a small rule, it's like a big part of the spirit of a Lethwei fight is, what is the goal of the fight? Is it to get the decision, or is it to knock the other person out? And there's a lot of overlap there, but if it becomes too similar to like Muay Thai, why would someone seek out Lethwei over that? Right.
I guess like with the rise of stuff like bare knuckle, to have a kind of a bare knuckle kickboxing of sorts with headbutts, it does have some sort of appeal, but I feel that they are diluting themselves a little bit in the pursuit of a more mainstream audience, to where if they did more stick to their guns, I feel that it would attract more of a hardcore following that you kind of need to have at the core if you're going to grow something like this,
Yeah, and I mean, that's how we entered into it, is from the traditional style of Lethwei. That's what, when we were first reading about that, I was like, holy shit, like this is fucking nuts, dude.
Yeah.
Like, let's learn more about this. And so, again, like, it was a great event. It was really exciting, good fighters, and I'm going to keep following the WLC. But yeah, I mean, they got some really tough decisions.
Yeah, you did, for sure. I mean, I really like you said, all respect to the WLC, Lethwei is making huge strides in the world at the moment, and I mean, it's pretty much all down to their work. So like, not a knock on them at all, but I couldn't shake the feeling that it was like Hollywood Lethwei a little bit, like showbiz Lethwei, where I feel that if they were more true to the really traditional roots of the sport, it would be able to get like more people on board to appreciate it for something different and something unique to Myanmar.
Yeah, I mean, that's the strongest point, and that's something that we're going to be having some more content coming up that's kind of connected to the more traditional Lethwei. We're going to get out into the sticks, see what's going on there.
That's right.
Quite excited about that.
Yeah, we'll be going to Mon State next week, so we'll hopefully have another one of these talking about that whole experience too. Now we're done. All right, thanks for listening, guys. We'll be back with more.
Yep, so yeah, follow us. We're going to be documenting and sharing our thoughts. You know, they're first impressions for newcomers, but you know, we're out here, we're checking it out, we're going to try and get deep. So yeah, follow if you want to see more of that, and yeah.
Yeah, coming at you from Yangon.
Yangon!
See you soon.
All right, peace.